Day 2. Catalina Island. Waking up to open ocean as we approached Catalina shortly before 8 a.m. was absolutely magical. I exercised to Gilad Jankowicz's retro Bodies in Motion, this episode from 1992, with that absolutely incredible morning coastal view, the words to describe. This was the morning I decided to exercise and try out some of the ship's pool and spa amenities, since visiting Catalina wasn't my biggest priority, and what have you while doing all these things? I was disappointed that the new sauna was kind of cheaply shoehorned in, with the floor-to-ceiling window view replaced with the equally as shoehorned in Cloud9 Thermal Suite spa area, which I didn't know before was an extra charge unless you booked a Cloud9 spa stateroom. I was fine without it, quite frankly, and it does not beat Princess Cruise Line's Enclave by any means. Escape completely isn't even the half of it. This was also my chance to experience the spacious gym where I uncomfortably, in front of everyone, did some dumbbell exercises, spent about 10 minutes in the sauna, which was a good enough experience by itself. It's a nice sauna, it's just clearly shoehorned in, and I resent them moving it from its original floor-to-ceiling window spot overlooking the ocean. The gym is wide and airy and spacious despite the way it very awkwardly and very abruptly curves at the forwardmost end. Aesthetic is important as well as functionality after all, and I love the skylight that was reminiscent of those exciting Kathie Lee Gifford promos for those class of ships back in the 90s, and while it was super reconfigured in that very 2015 gray color scheme, I could still feel the 90s inside and out. I loved it. I walked around the adults-only Serenity area. I love the way they expanded it. The asymmetry is a vibe, what can I say? And I love the view of the top of the big steel white alien sky dome, as I like to refer to it. Seriously, it did not need to be as big as it used to be, and I spent some time in the very lukewarm hot tub, the same amount of lukewarm as on the Miracle way back in 2021. What's the deal with that, Carnival? Knowing I was floating out in the ocean on a ship and looking up at the sky off the coast of a tropical island was a total mood. The words to describe. I went down both slides, an amazing experience. Highly recommend the slides for all ages. It's not a rushed experience at all, and it helped that no one was on deck yet. A lot of people were still asleep, and I tested both saltwater pools on panorama deck. For being so shallow, they were pretty good for laps. When it was just you. Very cold. I get hot easily and often, so this was refreshing for me personally, but maybe not for a lot of others, and then spent some time in one of the veranda hot tubs. So wondrous looking up at the back side of the funnel and just taking in the essence of Catalina. The hot tub was lukewarm though, FYI. At about 10:40 a.m., I returned to my new towel animal, a friendly message from my steward on the mirror, and some gains, brah. I also took a shower because I could. The old school curtain didn't pose a big issue in the shower, and I'm 6'2". The soap is really nice, the shower gel is also really nice. I then finally had brunch trying out Shaq's Big Chicken on the after veranda on panorama deck by the pool, across from the pizzeria. Another faux pas with my gluten and everything else allergy, breaded fried chicken and an enriched wheat bread bun, but it was totally worth the hype. It was incredible. You get a big, almost oversized piece of finely fried chicken, and it's tender through and through. This meant I was not going to have to eat and pay extra on the island, and ate on the port side with this special rare view of the island on my big beautiful ship. Not before having a few precious bites of the forbidden pastries. Nothing beat that peanut butter s'mores cake from the day before though. By noon I was finally on the tender, and it was bright. My sensitive light blue eyes could not take it. Our tender was also docked for some time, like at least 30 full minutes. Had a great conversation with a family originally from Atlanta, Georgia, though. Just seeing the ship from the tender is worth tendering to the island all in itself. You also realize just how far you're anchored off the island. I got reception once I hit land, but we were far enough away from the California border to be brought into SOS mode once back aboard. Be super careful that you are in airplane mode when you're on the ship and outside of the US. By almost exactly 12:30 p.m., I was back in that magical getaway land called Avalon, the city in Catalina, the only city in Catalina, really. Back in 2021, my life and the world really was in such a place that it hit hard just how enchanting it was. I wanted to live there, leaving all my worries behind. I like to think of Catalina Island as the Key West of the West Coast. Key West being the tropical island destination 166 miles from Miami that cruise ships often visit on Caribbean cruises, whereas Catalina is a mere 22 miles from Los Angeles, the county in which the island is also registered under. Key West is also significantly smaller than Catalina, though Avalon is virtually the same size by comparison. You can also drive to Key West from Miami. How am I just now learning about this? Just being anchored a further distance than I expected from Avalon is a refreshing and breathtaking experience. Speaking of refreshing, the wind was strong and smooth, and the water, even for Catalina standards, was ridiculously clear. The rains the night before probably had something to do with it. I had 3 goals: to walk the path of the boardwalk and back, to see the Chimes Tower, the Wrigley Mansion, and traverse, graze if you will, as many streets as possible. This was my 4th visit to Catalina within my lifetime, and while there still were things to see and experience that I hadn't, I could easily take the flyer there for roughly $90 round trip. Orange County flyers are all scheduled like cruise ships. You depart at a certain time, usually 9:30 a.m., and leave the island at a specific time, usually 5:30 p.m., whereas LA County ferries are actually hourly ferries that begin at 7:30 a.m. and end as late as 10:30 p.m. I was considering the Grand Casino Tour, where you get a formal tour of every nook and cranny of the legendary 1920s structure, including the back offices and the projector room behind the cinema. Now, back in October 2021, you could feel the effects of the pandemic, and the island was a very different place. The casino was just open, and I and my fellow other half-capacity guests and fellow visitors to the island could roam around essentially anywhere in that glorious building. I also was thinking about parasailing, but the excursion was at least $20 more through the cruise line, and I decided I'd do both of these with a friend later on. My priority was the rare onboard experience, so I hiked, no exaggeration, the technically 0.3 miles or 10-minute journey to the Chimes Tower, but it was an uphill climb the entire way and very windy. The dynamic shifting view and interaction with some really cool people made it all worth it, though. They were restoring parts of it, and it was so small there was nothing really to go into or do, but I'm glad I did it. Then backtracked to an even longer, windier, and more intensive hike to the completely closed-off Wrigley Mansion, which was giving foreboding Haunted Mansion vibes. And I'm not someone who looks at something old and automatically thinks it as haunted just because it's old. Speaking of which, the view was to die for. I had seen things I hadn't before. If you can afford to rent a roughly $60 golf cart, I would highly recommend it. Great way to experience so much more than I was able to with my strenuous hiking in the hot sun. But if you want the hiking experience, there is no better way to not skip leg day. I visited the museum, which I didn't realize was free and super enriching. I learned so much about the 1920s and Wrigley and the history of the island and its influence on pop culture and economy and Hollywood. I went to the alleged Marilyn Monroe house the last time I came to the island with my graphic designer friend, but I didn't realize just how long Norma Jean lived here for and how it helped develop her confidence during the late 1940s. I visited the library and its free book rack, much bigger than the last time I was here aboard the Miracle in, almost post-pandemic 2021. At that time, I picked up a free copy of Crossings by Danielle Steele from 1984. That turned into a miniseries in 1987, a TV miniseries, where they filmed a lot of it aboard the Queen Mary, which is interesting because it used to be, the book was based aboard the Normandy, but Queen Mary was there and present. It all makes sense. Would love to do a review of it in the future. Overall, I walked a total of 7.11 miles from noon to about 4 p.m. when I finally took my tender legs to the tender and back to the ship. Call time was 4:30, by the way, for context. The earlier back to the ship, the better. My phone battery had died again, so I let it charge and enjoyed the ship and the view of Catalina before we departed. I wanted to try the ropes course before we departed, but it was closed, so I decided to have that overpriced $12.50 mojito with a $2-something service charge, actually making it closer to $16 total. We were supposed to leave at 5 p.m., but something happened. A late, booked-through carnival excursion or medical emergency, perhaps, because one last tender arrived close to 5:45 p.m., and we were off closer to 6. It was around this time I spotted what had to be the Carnival Firenze far off in the distance, probably departing Long Beach for a 4 or 5 day Mexico cruise herself. Try to get some photos and footage of the captain as I was waiting for my dining room seating near the atrium, and his security guard tried to block my view as if I had a weapon or something, which is understandable if that was the reason, or maybe they just wanted you to pay the official price for a digital or hard copy print, which this security guard crew member encouraged me to do for dinner that evening, where I waited just an extra 10 minutes for a specially requested window view, where I could see the Firenze still in tandem with us, even though it was so terribly far away. I had a very good and scrumptious, mostly allergy-friendly meal with a legit balsamic vinaigrette garden salad accompanying a classic shrimp cocktail, though with very little sauce, garlic shrimp, incredible fried calamari, and an absolutely scrumptious beef side with this very unique panna cotta made from sweetened cream milk and gelatin with, I believe, a rather thin raspberry filling. This is important to note. Because of my allergies, my next meal was planned out on the spot ahead of time, so all this that was set before me was pre-planned. Once I arrived, immediately I never had to look at the menu. I just let them know the plan, pre-planned. They checked the tablet and brought everything out in courses before me. This is also when I started to take my Spanish learning book everywhere, or Spanish learning books everywhere to prepare myself for the next day in Ensenada. More evening strolls. It actually started to sprinkle this evening. I believe the 2013 version of The Great Gatsby was playing, which was the first night. I think it showed 2 or 3 times actually. So magical at night. They opened the buffet at odd hours with minimal options for midnight snacks. This evening at around 9:30 p.m. I had some cream of mushroom soup, which was pretty good, and some chocolate pudding pie, which was, decent. Showered, cozied up to TCM and Ship of Fools, and prepared myself for what would be my biggest day in Ensenada. Stay tuned.